looking through my catalogue of video games that I've played throughout my life, I realised that a lot of my favourite games are JRPGs, and I know some people in my friend group have at least one or two JRPGs on their list too. When I see most people reminiscing on JRPGs of the 90s and early 2000s, it's usually the games on the Super Nintendo or PlayStation 1, like Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Earthbound, Suikoden, Breath of Fire, and the many Final Fantasy games. Sega consoles aren't usually what I think of when JRPGs come to mind, but Sega fans had a few to fill their appetite back then, like the Sign-In and Phantasy Star series, and if you were lucky back in 1998, Panzer Dragoon Saga. But the one I want to give high praise is none other than the Dreamcast gem, Skies of Arcadia. Growing up, I used to read a bunch of Nintendo magazines, the official Nintendo UK magazines to be exact, and I remember seeing screenshots of the Gamecube port a few times. It is pretty cool being centered around pirates, which was something I enjoyed from watching stuff like Muppets Treasure Island and the bad 4Kids One Piece dub. However, at the time, I wasn't into JRPGs, and that weren't Pokemon. It wasn't until I played Tales of Symphonia and Fire Emblem that I grew to love the genre, so I never bothered with Skies of Arcadia until I was an adult. Thinking about my nostalgic memories playing my older brother's Dreamcast, that I decided to buy myself one with a bunch of games, including the likes of Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2, Shenmue 1 and 2, Jet Set Radio, Sonic Adventure, and of course Skies of Arcadia. The price for retro gaming wasn't too absurd around the early 2010s, unlike it is today, so I got all these games at a decent price. Skies of Arcadia was something that I played a few times since my purchase, and over time I grew to love it even more, especially during my recent playthrough. So today I want to talk about what makes Skies of Arcadia a treasured JRPG. The game was developed by Overworks, who were made up of Sakura Wars, Phantasy Star, and Panzer Dragoon staff, which, looking at the library, seemed like a dream team. Ryoto Kodama took up the producer role and is one of the most influential people, not just at Sega, but also in the industry, even achieving the Pioneer Award at the 2018 Games Developer Choice Awards, only being one of 3 Japanese people to ever achieve this award to this day. She contributed to plenty of older Sega titles, like the first 2 Sonic games, as well as being one of the biggest names behind the original Phantasy Star series, being the lead graphics artist for the first game and the director for Phantasy Star 4, End of the Millennium. The scenario writer who came up with the world tour, as well as one of the directors, is Shintaro Tanikawa, who is someone you may not have heard of unless if you played Valkyria Chronicles, as he was heavily involved in the first 3 games and was the lead scenario writer for the first 2 Sakura Wars titles, which he can totally see in the turn of both stories. The music was composed by Tatsuyuki Miida and Yutaka Minobe, who have composed quite a few music for other Sega titles, like Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the Advanced games, as well as the Panzer Dragoon and Space Channel 5 series. It's an impressive cast to have worked for games that have similar elements to this Dreamcast classic. Skies of Arcadia originally started out as a Sega Saturn title named Project Ares, with Ryoto Kodama and another producer. However, nothing was set in stone, only having a few design and general ideas. During development, the team heard about the Dreamcast, so the game jumped to be worked on for the new hardware. However, the higher-ups at the time wanted the game to be ready for launch, which never happened. In fact, the game was delayed until it was released in 2000 in Japan and the US, and in 2001 in Europe. The delay might have not been ideal, but it helped in the long run in terms of quality. Sentaro Tanikawa jumped into the role of one of the directors and writers and came up with the concept of the Sky Pirates, discovering uncharted lands, and the magical moonstones, which were inspired by multiple things, most notably the Age of Discovery during the 15th and 16th century, Dragon Quest III, as well as Miyazaki's Yapaka Castle in the Sky. In fact, one of the main heroes, Aita, it's awfully similar to Doria from Castle in the Sky.
Coincidence? I think not!
Beforehand, the idea was to have fights on top of trains and on land, which can be seen in one section of the game. Unlike the Star Wars 3 and Sonic Adventure team that went abroad for the research, the Skies devs unfortunately didn't get the opportunity to go abroad, but went to visit the Misakaya warships in Japan to get inspiration for the battleships in the game. It was probably a nice trip, but it probably didn't compare to visiting the luxurious Paris or the exotic countries in South America. The team wanted to push the Dreamcast to its limit, having a lot of transparency textures, reflection mapping, sound quality, and the graphics, which is noticeable considering how slow some of the battle animations load. In fact, this floating ball of joy pupil was created to show off the reflection mapping, since they weren't able to use that technology during the Saturn days. The game was originally released for the Sega Dreamcast back in 2000 and was re-released for the Nintendo Gamecube in 2003 under the name Skies of Arcadia Legends, which included all the DLC from the original as well as new content like optional boss fights. No, the exclusive VMU game Pinterest West was removed entirely. For this video, however, I will be talking about the original Dreamcast game, since this is the one I physically own, and while there are other ways to play it, I tend to prefer to record on original hardware if possible, hence why the quality of the footage isn't as grand. I've talked a lot about the making of the game, but what exactly is Skies of Arcadia, and why do I love it so much? Well, I hope you brought some rations and water, because it's time to set sail to the world of Skies of Arcadia. Set in the world above the clouds with pirates roam in airships, seeking adventure and treasure, magical moonstones that fuel these ships, and a corrupted empire, this game is imaginative. There are two kinds of pirates, the Black Pirates, which are your usual cutthroat bandits raiding unarmed ships, and then you have the Blue Roads, which are the Robin Hoods of the skies, stealing from the corrupt and seeking adventure. One night, a mysterious woman named Fina gets kidnapped on a valuing ship that is run by the slimy butt-kisser Admiral Alfonso. She is then saved by two young Blue Roads, Vice and Aika, during one of their raids. Shortly after, Fina explains that she's a Sylvite, a near-extinct race from generations ago who now live above the sky, distant from the rest of civilization, and was tasked to go down to retrieve the mystical moon crystals, otherwise it would fall into the wrong hands. Vice and Aita help her out on a mission to retrieve the moon crystals and embark on an adventure of a lifetime. The plot itself is pretty standard. Get the 6 magical MacGuffins before the evil empire does, in this case the Valuans. However, it's not about the destination, but the journey along the way, and boy, what a journey. While the main objective is collecting the moon crystals, you aren't just going to go from one crystal to another immediately, as the story sets things up with different events, never having a dull moment. Like Tanikawa's previous work on Star Wars, the story is simple, but it's the character interactions, the antics the cast get into, and the world building that will keep you invested if you decide to play it. One of the most important things for me in a story is whether or not the cast are engaging to be around, especially the main protagonist. In a 30+ hour long JRPG, I would like to have someone who is a joy to be around and not an insufferable person. Even if the gameplay is fine, having a main character I despise could damage my overall enjoyment. That doesn't mean I hate characters that are absolute scum, as long as they are written well. Thankfully, the majority of the cast are some of the most fun people to be around, especially our main hero, Vice. Unlike a lot of main characters in the genre, Vice doesn't have a sad backstory, nor is destined to save the world with a unique ability, and unlike the majority of the Fire Emblem heroes, both of his parents are alive and well throughout the game, which is refreshing. He's just a simple pirate who used his father's crew to start his own along with Ita and Fina to explore uncharted lands. Not to say he doesn't go through an arc. He clearly has his own goals to one day to be a captain of his own crew like his dad and discover the mysteries of the world. He is a guy that never gives up on his dreams, no matter how tough it may be. If I would compare him to another character, it would be Sonic the Hedgehog, as besides both having a yellow best friend, there are characters who are there to help the other characters around them go through their arcs, either by rubbing off their carefree attitude, strong will, or bring back a part of themselves they thought they have lost. I wouldn't say Vice is a Gary Stew, as he's still young and inexperienced in some areas, who over time matures and even learns a thing or two from some of the older cast members. Ike is the best friend character who shares a lot of similar traits to Vice, being a mostly positive person who tries to cheer up her friends. She's a bit more immature than Vice and sometimes has a quick temper, but she does have her genuine moments and is one of two characters that gave me the most laughs. Her and Fina have that sisterly bond, with her taking the role of the older sister that takes her friend under her wing. The chemistry between these three is great. Fina is our soldier of the game, who is just new to the world as the player is, but is also the reason the rest of the crew are on this journey to begin with, which is the reason why I feel she's the actual main character of this story. She starts off shy due to being isolated from the rest of the world, but over time opens up more thanks to spending time with Vice, Ita, and the rest of the characters they meet on their travels. She even picks up some of their mannerisms. Their friendship feels natural. I'm happy to see some strong female characters that can stand on their own. In a Kotaku interview with Tadama, she was asked about how the interviewer mentioned how Ike and Fina are kind women but also give many chances to be as adventurous as any other character in the game, and wondered if it was vital to have these kinds of characters. Fina, for instance, made an important impression on the interviewer when she was younger. Tadama responded by saying, "These female characters were designed to be on the same footing as the male protagonist, not to be saved by him." The story of other characters who crossed paths with Vice, Fina, and Ita were written around these three characters. Besides a couple of minor instances with Ita, I'm saying that the team succeeded in bringing some strong female characters. Tadama mentions that she does not decide the game's message at the onset of the project. Rather, this takes shape over the course of the production as conversations between staff build on each other, and in the end, they are able to remove elements that deviate from the nascent vision. She thinks it is best to have players discover this themselves as opposed to forcing them to take notice. The staff won't hear you trying to force an agenda, they just wanted to make some great female characters that can stand on their own and not be defined by an agenda. You will always have these three in your party, but there are three more you eventually meet, and all of them are just as fun to be around, with two of them having their own personal arcs they go through. Unlike a lot of JRPGs, the final three characters don't stay in the party too long, which may seem like a bad thing, but I feel it makes sense for the story as to why they aren't always around. Plus, they have enough screen time for us to get to know them, with them having satisfying conclusions. A good set of heroes also needs a good set of villains, which is mostly a solid lineup. The major antagonists are the Valorant Admirals, and a lot of them are three-dimensional with their own agendas. Even the ones that are more one-dimensional ham up their evilness. Shout out to Dodoko, who's basically a Unitunes character. The only one I wasn't too big on is Vigoro, as he's kind of a creep who satirizes Ika and that is played for laughs. Now, There are many things in the game that enhance the story, like the overall presentation, which holds up well after over 2 decades. The music is stellar, going for an orchestral piece, and thanks to the power of the Dreamcast, not only is the quality great, but allowed the sound designers and composers to allow music to change seamlessly, being one of the first to do so on a console. The overworld theme changes instruments depending on the location. It's not just the overworld theme that changes. The boss battles also neatly transition depending on the parties and the boss's health. If the player uses health, then the music becomes more dire and louder. But when the party is on the verge of victory, then the music becomes more triumphant. The game features a lot of sound clips, which are fine. It is probably better than the bad voice acting that was common during that generation. I looked at the voice actors and I didn't find anything substantial, besides Vice having the same voice as the guy from Deadly Premonition, but the biggest surprise was seeing Charles Martinet's name in the credits, the guy who voices Mario, and he plays video of all characters. I'm just imagining Mario coming out of his voice.
Hello!
Cutlass Fury!
The main character artist is Hoshi Itsuki. He made a lot of Got Hack and Yu-Gi-Oh! Dozens, and later became one of the character artists for the latest Got Hack game, and her work translates well into 3D models. The characters are incredibly expressive, going for an anime art style which matches the game's light-hearted tone, especially during the more comedic moments. This game has a lot of rings. The staff wanted Skies of Arcadia to stand out from the more realistic looking RPGs during this period of gaming by being more whimsical, as well as to understand character emotions better. So compare it to games like Final Fantasy VIII, a game that was made during Skies' development, it has aged a lot better visually. To be fair, the Dreamcast is a more powerful console than the original PlayStation, but it came around the same time. It is certainly impressive with its high quality score, remapping visuals, though it does come with some faults. There are times where it takes a while to load all the assets into battle. The Legends version includes slightly better character models, most notably actual individual fingers to the models. With how technical the game is, the game was split into 2 discs. The Legends version, on the other hand, was in 1 disc. However, the music quality isn't as great as it's on the Dreamcast, which is one of the couple of things the original version has over Legends. The world feels natural to live in, with many different cultures being inspired by plenty of real-life locations, like Yafatoma being inspired by Japan and China, as well as Valuer feeling like Britain of the past, with the glum streets and the fashion of the Vits, especially the Queen, who seems to be modelled after Queen Victoria. The things you interact with in the overworld also enhances the game's world building, as while you fly in a ship that you used to travel in the overworld, you would find discoveries that give you facts about the things you find. It also enhances Vice's personal interest of understanding the world around him, plus it makes it feel like the pirate theme isn't just for show, but a part of Skies of Arcadia's unique identity. It was fun to discover them and learn more about the world. You are rewarded with more gold if you give your discoveries to the guildman in the places you visit. I don't view that anything substantial if you find all of them, but for me, like my thoughts on the story, it's about the journey, not the destination. Some of these discoveries also include optional boss fights, which is a nice reward for exploration or replaying the game again. The dungeons you visit feel like you're visiting unknown territories, and for the most part, I personally enjoy these dungeons, with a lot of them having fun, unique puzzles. And now, I would say the final couple don't offer much variety. The only thing I would say that might be an issue when exploring are the random encounters you experience, especially with the loading times I've mentioned, which some may find irritating. Even before I played Skies of Arcadia for the first time, one of the biggest issues I've heard was how frequent random battles were, and well, it wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. Sometimes battles would occur frequently, but there would be times where I could move at a distance before even encountering one. The Dreamcast would make some noise right before a fight would happen, even if I was just standing still. Random battles aren't too bad, especially when Aika learns Yamda Burst that can kill most group of enemies in a single turn. You will be hearing her say that quite often. Thankfully, random encounters don't occur when you are in the middle of performing a puzzle, otherwise that would be a pain. Later on in the game, you can get a part for your set that can skip random encounters altogether. If you have issues with the frequent random encounters, then Legends might be the better version since they reduce the encounter rates. Speaking of which, how is the overall combat? Well, it's fun for the most part. Skies of Arcadia is a turn-based JRPG like many, but it puts its own spin on things. You have your standard attacks and magic spells, but the way you learn moves is different, as level ups are more used just to increase a character's stats. Each character can equip 6 moonstones onto their weapon and change them on the fly, in or out of battle. The moonstones have their own leveling system, and depending on the color the character has equipped at the end of a battle, that color will get the most experience points. This is how you gain new spells. Magic is divided into 6 groups, which takes the form of the 6 moonstones, each with their own specialty. If you want a character to prioritize healing magic, then you can do that, or if you want someone to focus on buffing party members, you can do that too. You can give everyone a bit of everything if you feel like it. There's a lot of freedom in your pocket. Moonstones you equip and the enemies you fight also have a strong and weakness chart. So if you are fighting an enemy that is highlighted yellow, then equipping a blue moonstone onto your weapon will do more damage. While there is a strong and weakness weapon chart, it doesn't affect battles too much, as you can beat them with any color you pick. It just makes it a bit easier. Magic spells don't cost much MP in or out of battle, as this game has something else to make it stand out, that being the Spirit Meter. The Spirit Meter bar is a reactive meter that is used for magic and super moves that cost spirit points. Each character has their own unique super attacks and can be unlocked by finding a certain amount of moonberries in the overworld or in battle. These super moves can be incredibly powerful or can aid you during a dangerous boss fight, and these super moves get so flashy to watch. The super attacks in the bar makes the combat system stand out from the pack. In normal encounters during the overworld, it's straightforward, but during dungeons and boss fights, it really keeps you on your toes, making you think what to do next. Do you wait until you use Vice's ultra powerful attack that costs more of your SP, or do you use your SP by casting healing magic and increase the party's defense? Maybe I want to use Aika's Delta Shield to nullify the enemy's magic instead, or using a multi-hit attack. SPs can be gained by using standard attacks in battle, but can even double if you use the focus command instead of attacking, giving you another way to approach a fight. There are a lot of ways to plan out a fight. Heck, I even used the Dark command a good number of times, even during regular battles. My issues with battles are how slow it can be, especially during random battles where you just want to press onto the next objective. You can thankfully skip your super moves with a press of a button, but unfortunately you cannot skip magic attacks and enemy attacks. Certain bosses have super moves too, which are just as long as your own, which is cool, but it sounds like you are forced to watch these on repeat. I didn't have many issues with progressing through the story. The game can be challenging, I even lost a couple of fights, but I felt these losses were my fault, and not because I was underleveled. I never had to grind just to defeat a tough boss. Besides standard battles, you also have sit battles. At first, I didn't enjoy sit combat, being confused on how they worked during my first playthrough, but over time, as I got the mechanics down, these became a lot of fun. They don't get a lot of fun to watch, but when you are the one playing, they are engaging. Instead of playing as a party of 4, you are to control one battleship that can perform up to 4 actions per turn, whether it be attacking, using magic, guarding, or using a super move. The enemies can do all this too. Before each turn is initiated, a grid is displayed where you can plan out your actions. The grid highlights 3 colors that range on how dangerous or safe it is to attack, with green being mostly safe, yellow being slightly dangerous, to red where the enemy would use their powerful attack. There are also icons to where there is a high chance of the player performing a critical hit, or is able to use their Moonstone Cannon. The spirit point meter is also present during these battles, and they play more of a vital role here, as every action you do in that turn, minus items, focusing and guarding, would cost you some spirit points, really putting strategy into these fights. Is it best to only attack once or twice, and yet the rest of your turn using the guard and focus commands to increase your spirit points for the next turn, or is it best to attack all at once? Both types of combat have a lot of depth. Similar to my issue with regular fights, it takes a while to end, and not being able to skip animations, making it for the best time to boil a proper brew. Throughout the adventure, Vice is able to recruit people around the world to his crew, each with their own ability that can be used in air battles, which makes air combat a lot more interesting. For example, using Pinter will free protect the ship from attacks for a full turn. Pinter saved my bacon during the endgame. At some point in the story, Vice creates a new hideout for his crew, and some of these crew members will offer their services, like saying new items and weapons, or even decorating the hideout to really make it feel like home. I love being able to explore the hideout and going into the taverns where his employees hang out, and even visiting the party's bedrooms, each having their own unique style. Seeing Vice's crew members outside of battle and interacting with them really makes it feel more like a community that is lived in rather than just data. It's not something that needs to be here, but the details the devs put in to make it feel like the pirate life is really appreciated. There are plenty of more little touches too that help make me immerse within the world, like how Vice's title changes throughout the adventure. I feel like the people working on this game had a lot of fun making it when I was playing through it. My only biggest issues with the game are the speed of the battles and the unskippable battle animations. But, like many JRPGs back in the day, a good remastered port could easily remove this issue. I'm fortunate to have a physical copy of this game. It's such a shame that a wonderful gem such as Skies of Arcadia is locked behind old consoles that came out decades ago. I highly recommend anyone, especially JRPG fans, to play this game any way they can. Legends on the Gamecube is the best way to play it, thanks to having more content, updated graphics, and lowering encounter rates, but any version is perfectly fine. The Dreamcast version uses the VMUs. I unfortunately didn't play Pinter's Quest, but it's a good way to get extra items and gold. I did get footage of Cupo in the VMUs, which was another way to find charms in the game, and while the GameCube version had a way to find them too, it was cute seeing Cupo on your controller. There were plans to bring Skies of Arcadia to more homes. Legends was planned to be ported to the PlayStation 2, however the sales of the GameCube version did not live up to Sega's expectations, so it was cancelled in the end. Many people behind the original game also wanted to do a sequel. Unfortunately, Sega at the time were changing, resulting in many of the staff members separating. Despite it being locked on 6th generation consoles, the legacy of Skies of Arcadia is still strong, especially amongst Sega fans. Vice, Ica, and Fina were playable units in Valkyria Chronicles, and in Japan only Valkyria Chronicles 3. The majority of the cars were in the Mega Man and Sonic crossover Worlds Unite, and Vice was a playable racer along with a Skies of Arcadia themed course in All Stars Racing Transformed, due to being highly requested by fans. The game had many merch too, including an Italian manga adaptation by Gekken Magazine Z, which ran from October 2000 to March of 2002, a soundtrack released back in 2019, and figures of Vice and Ica that I wish I could afford. I wish this game got the recognition it deserved, like the popular RPGs of the 90s and 2000s. I'm not saying it should have spawned into a franchise, as I think this is fine the way it is. Plus, many of the staff members aren't around anymore or busy with developing other games. Just give it a remaster port to add a few quality of life improvements so more people can play this JRPG treasure. Before I end the video, I want to mention how I love the cast members and would love to know what some of your favourite JRPG parties are, not particularly a single character, but as a group. For me, the main party of Tales of Vesperia is up there for me. I love practically everyone in that team, and how 3 of the team members, including the main one, are over in their 20s. 4 if you're playing the definitive edition. I just love their growth throughout the adventure, all coming from different backgrounds, and learning more about each other as the story goes. If you also played Skies of Arcadia, let me know your thoughts on the game too in the comments below, and I hope you have a wonderful day.